The chandeliers of the Montgomery estate sparkled like frozen stars above Marcus Wellington's head as he adjusted his Patek Philippe watch. The fundraiser gala buzzed with Manhattan's elite, their champagne glasses catching the light as they discussed mergers and acquisitions. Marcus barely listened to the senator droning beside him. His mind was elsewhere, calculating his next business move, mentally reviewing the quarterly reports his CFO had emailed that morning. Then she walked in carrying a silver tray, and his world stopped spinning. Isabella. His Isabella. The woman he'd searched for across 3 continents for 5 years. The woman who'd disappeared the night before their wedding without a trace, leaving nothing but questions and a pain so profound it had fundamentally changed who he was. The love of his life who'd shattered him into pieces he never quite reassembled. And now she stood 20 feet away, wearing a maid's uniform, her once vibrant hazel eyes downcast as she served canapes to guests who didn't even glance her way, who looked through her like she was furniture. If you're loving this story of second chances and hidden truths, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Now, let's find out what happens when Marcus confronts the woman who vanished with his heart. Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The sharp sound cut through the classical music like a gunshot, and heads turned toward him, Manhattan's power players all watching the usually composed Marcus Wellington lose control, but he didn't care. His legs moved on autopilot, weaving through designer gowns and tailored suits, pushing past a startled socialite who protested loudly, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest. "Isabella," he breathed when he reached her, the name catching in his throat after 5 years of not saying it aloud. She looked up, and he watched the color drain from her face like someone had opened a valve. The tray trembled in her hands, canapes sliding dangerously to one side. For a moment, just a heartbeat, her eyes softened, filled with something that looked like longing, like love, like every emotion she'd buried for 5 years suddenly rising to the surface. Then her expression hardened into stone, that old survival instinct kicking in. "I'm sorry, sir. You must have me mistaken for someone else," she said, her voice cold and professional, but he heard the tremor underneath. "My name is Bella Rodriguez. Don't—" His hand shot out, grasping her wrist. Her skin was still soft, but there were new calluses he didn't recognize, rough patches on her palms from years of scrubbing and cleaning. "Don't lie to me. I've memorized every freckle on your face, every note of your laugh. I know the way you bite your bottom lip when you're nervous. You're doing it right now. I know you, Isabella Marie Carter." She wrenched her arm free, stepping back like he'd burned her. "Please lower your voice. I'll lose my job. I need this job." "Then quit. Come with me. Let me—" "Mr. Wellington." The Montgomery family's head butler appeared, his expression stern, his eyes taking in the broken champagne glass and the commotion Marcus had caused. "Is there a problem with the service?" Isabella's eyes pleaded with Marcus, begging him to let it go, to walk away, to pretend they were strangers passing in the night. Every instinct screamed at him to grab her, to demand answers, to never let her disappear again. But the fear in her eyes stopped him cold. It was real fear, the kind that came from experience, from knowing exactly what happened when you didn't comply. "No problem," Marcus heard himself say, the words tasting like ash. "I thought she was someone I knew. My mistake." The butler nodded curtly, clearly unconvinced but willing to let it drop for a valued guest. "Very good, sir. Rodriguez, return to the kitchen. Now." Marcus watched her hurry away, her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself invisible, navigating the crowd with practiced efficiency. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, fingernails digging into his palms. 5 years of wondering, of hiring private investigators who found nothing, of waking up reaching for someone who wasn't there, of building an empire to fill the void she'd left. And she was here all along, scrubbing floors in his business associate's mansion. He had to know why. He'd tear down the entire city if that's what it took to get answers. Marcus couldn't focus for the rest of the gala. He made excuses, shook hands mechanically, and left early despite the senator's protests about an important introduction he'd promised to make. As his driver navigated the Manhattan streets toward his penthouse, Marcus's mind rewound to the night Isabella vanished, playing those final hours on repeat like he had 1,000 times before. They'd been so happy, deliriously, impossibly happy in a way that felt almost naive looking back. He'd been 28, a rising star in the investment world with his father's firm, and she'd been 23, finishing her master's in art history at Columbia. They'd met at a gallery opening in Chelsea, some pretentious modern art exhibit that Marcus had only attended because a client insisted. Isabella had been standing in front of a Rothko painting, and he'd overheard her passionately arguing with another viewer about color theory and emotional resonance. "You're missing the point," she'd said, gesturing animatedly at the canvas. "That's not about what you see, it's about what you feel. Rothko wanted to create an experience, not just a visual. When you stand here, really stand here and let yourself feel it, you're not looking at paint on canvas. You're looking at grief made tangible." Marcus had been transfixed, not by the painting but by her, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about art, the passionate gestures, the intensity with which she experienced the world. He'd introduced himself, and she'd laughed at his admission that he knew nothing about art. "That's okay," she'd said, her smile making his chest feel tight. "I know nothing about investment banking, so we're even. Want to get coffee and educate each other?" That coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a walk through Central Park that lasted until 2 a.m. By sunrise, Marcus was already half in love. By the end of their first month together, he was completely gone. Isabella had been different from everyone in his world. She didn't care about his money or his family name. She'd never heard of Wellington. Industries. Had no idea his father was Richard Wellington. Had zero interest in the social climbing that defined most relationships in his circle. She loved him, for the man he was when he wasn't performing for clients or living up to his father's impossible expectations. 6 months later, he'd proposed on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, the lights of Manhattan glowing behind them. She'd cried, happy tears that he'd kissed away and said yes before he even finished asking. They'd planned a June wedding, small, intimate, just close friends and family. Isabella had spent months designing every detail, her artistic eye turning their wedding into something magical. The night of June 22nd, Marcus had driven Isabella home to her apartment in Brooklyn. They'd sat in his car for an hour, not wanting to say goodnight, knowing that the next time they saw each other, it would be at the altar. "I can't wait to marry you," Isabella had whispered, her hand on his cheek. "I can't wait to spend every day for the rest of my life with you." "One more day," Marcus had said, kissing her deeply. "Just get through tomorrow, and then you're mine forever." "I'm already yours," she'd said, smiling that smile that made the whole world feel right. "I've been yours since that first coffee." She'd kissed him one more time, grabbed her purse and walked into her building. Marcus had watched until she disappeared inside, then driven home feeling like the luckiest man alive. By morning, she was gone. Marcus had arrived at the church at noon, 2 hours early, too excited to wait. By 2 p.m., the scheduled start time, he was calling Isabella's phone, straight to voicemail. By 2:30, he was at her apartment, pounding on the door. The landlord had let him in, and Marcus had walked into an empty space. Completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, no photos, nothing but dust and the faint scent of her perfume. Her parents claimed they hadn't seen her. Her friends knew nothing. Her phone was disconnected. Her bank accounts were closed. It was like she'd been erased from existence, and Marcus had been left standing in that empty apartment, wedding ring in his pocket, world crumbling around him. He'd nearly destroyed himself searching, hired every private investigator in the state, offered a $100,000 reward for information, alienated friends by obsessively questioning them. His work suffered. He missed meetings, lost. Clients made poor decisions because he couldn't focus on anything but finding her. Eventually, his father had forced him to accept reality. Richard Wellington had sat him down in his office, given him a glass of scotch, and delivered the hard truth. "Son, people leave. Sometimes they leave for reasons that make sense, sometimes they don't. But this girl, she didn't want to be found. And you need to accept that and move on. The business needs you, the family needs you. You can't spend the rest of your life chasing a ghost. So Marcus had buried himself in work. He'd taken over struggling divisions of Wellington Industries and turned them profitable. He'd made aggressive acquisitions, risky investments that paid off spectacularly. He'd worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, because working meant not thinking about Isabella. 5 years later, he'd built his modest inheritance into a personal fortune worth over $1 billion. He was featured in Forbes, profiled in the Wall Street Journal, invited to exclusive galas and fundraisers. He'd dated beautiful women, models, actresses, executives, women who looked good in photos but felt wrong in his arms. And late at night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the city they'd planned to share, he'd still reach across the bed for someone who wasn't there. Now she was here, working as a maid, and he'd seen something in her eyes tonight that he recognized from years of looking in the mirror, the haunted look of someone who'd survived something terrible. The next morning, Marcus cancelled all his meetings. His assistant, Patricia, stared at him in shock when he told her to clear his entire week. "Sir, you have the Chen Industries merger meeting on Wednesday. They flew in from Hong Kong specifically. Reschedule it," Marcus said flatly. "Tell them I have a family emergency." "Do you have a family emergency?" Marcus thought about Isabella carrying a silver tray, eyes downcast, living as someone named Bella Rodriguez. "Yes, I do." By noon, he'd assembled his security team, former Secret Service agents, ex-military and the best private investigators money could buy. James Chen, his head of security, sat across from Marcus's desk with a thick file. "Bella Rodriguez," James began, reading from his notes, "appeared in New York 3 years ago with documents that are impressively forged. Social security number, birth certificate, employment history. Whoever created her new identity knew what they were doing. She works 3 jobs, the Montgomery estate on weekends, a diner called Sal's in Queens on weekdays, and night shifts at a laundromat in the Bronx. 3 jobs?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "How many hours is she working?" "Our estimate, 60 to 70 hours a week. She lives in a studio apartment in the Bronx, $800 a month, which is actually expensive for that neighborhood, but it's got 3 deadbolts and security cameras. No car, takes public transportation everywhere." James pulled out surveillance photos. Bella, walking to the bus stop, head down. Isabella carrying groceries. Isabella looking over her shoulder at a crosswalk. In every photo, she looked like someone expecting danger. "She never goes anywhere without checking her surroundings," James continued. "Security footage shows constant hypervigilance. She jumps at unexpected sounds, changes her route frequently. Classic behavior of someone hiding from something or someone." Marcus's blood ran cold. "She's running. Someone scared her away. Someone made her disappear. That's our assessment. Want us to dig into who?" "Get me everything on the Carter family," Marcus ordered, his voice hard. "Every financial transaction, every phone call, every person they've associated with for the past 7 years. I don't care if it's legal or not. I don't care what it costs. Find out who did this to her." James nodded and left. Marcus stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at Manhattan without seeing it. Someone had hurt Isabella. Someone had taken her from him, forced her into hiding, made her work herself to exhaustion just to survive, and when he found out who, he was going to destroy them. By evening, the truth started emerging. Thomas Carter, Isabella's father, had been a gambling addict, a fact Marcus had known but never understood the severity of. After Isabella and Marcus got engaged, Thomas's gambling had spiraled out of control. He'd borrowed $50,000 from Vincent Moretti, a loan shark with connections to organized crime. When Thomas couldn't pay, Moretti had made him an offer. Forgive the debt plus interest if Isabella married Moretti's son Anthony. A business arrangement. Isabella for $50,000 and the continued good health of Thomas and his wife. Marcus's hands shook as he read the report. Isabella hadn't left him because she stopped loving him. She'd left because her father had sold her to save his own life. She'd walked away from everything. From him, from their life together, from her dreams, to protect her parents. "Where's Moretti now?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Prison. Got 15 years for racketeering 2 years ago. His son Anthony died in a car accident 6 months after Isabella disappeared, drunk driving. wrapped his Ferrari around a tree on the Long Island Expressway. Then why is she still hiding? James pulled out more documents. Moretti has two brothers, Salvatore and Carlo, both active in the family business. If they found out Isabella defied Vincent's orders, even with him in prison and Anthony dead, the Morettis don't forgive. They make examples. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair rolling back and hitting the credenza. I need to talk to her tonight. Sir, approaching her could put her at risk. If the Morettis are watching, then we do it carefully, but I'm not waiting another day. I've waited 5 years. I'm done waiting. Marcus waited outside the Montgomery estate until midnight, when Isabella's shift ended. He'd positioned himself in the shadows near the service entrance, James and 2 other security personnel watching from a distance in case things went wrong. The October air was cold, his breath visible in the darkness. When Isabella emerged, she looked exhausted, shoulders sagging, moving with the slow, deliberate steps of someone who'd been on her feet for 12 hours. She pulled her thin jacket tighter against the cold and started walking toward the bus stop. Marcus stepped from the shadows. Isabella, she gasped, spinning around so fast she nearly fell. Her hand flew to her chest, and in the streetlight, Marcus saw genuine terror flash across her face before recognition replaced it. God, you scared me. What are you? You can't be here. She looked around frantically, checking the shadows, the parked cars, the darkened windows of nearby buildings. I know about Moretti. The words hung in the cold air between them. Isabella's face crumbled, 5 years of held-back emotion flooding through the cracks in her carefully constructed armor. Her eyes filled with tears she'd probably been holding back for years. How did you... Her voice broke. It doesn't matter. You need to stay away from me, Marcus. I'm serious. They'll hurt you just to get to me. They'll hurt you just because you're talking to me right now. Anthony's dead. Vincent's in prison. Vincent has 2 brothers and a dozen cousins who'd kill me just to prove a point. Isabella's voice rose desperate and raw. Don't you understand? I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because loving you meant watching them kill you. They told me exactly how they'd do it. Dump your body in the Hudson with cinder blocks tied to your feet. Make it look like a business deal gone wrong, and then they'd go after my parents anyway, just to make sure I understood the cost of disobedience. Marcus closed the distance between them in 3 strides. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears streaming down her cheeks. She was thinner than he remembered, her cheekbones more pronounced, her skin paler from years of working night shifts. I don't care, he said fiercely. I've spent 5 years half alive, going through the motions, building an empire I don't even want, because it fills the hours I used to spend with you. I dated other women and compared them all to you. I bought a penthouse with a view you would have loved and stood at the windows wondering where you were. If the Morettis want to come after me, let them come. I have resources now, security, lawyers, I can protect you. You can't protect me from these people, Isabella whispered, her hands coming up to grip his wrists. I've been looking over my shoulder for 5 years. I changed my name, my hair, my entire life, and I still don't feel safe. I work 3 jobs so I can save enough to disappear again if I need to. I haven't slept through the night in 5 years because every sound might be them coming for me. The day I stop running is the day I die. Then we'll run together. Or better yet, we'll fight. We'll destroy them legally, financially, whatever it takes. They're criminals, Isabella. I have access to federal prosecutors, FBI contacts, politicians who owe me favors. We can build a case. You're not listening. Isabella pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. You don't get it. You're Marcus Wellington now, billionaire, Wall Street darling. Your picture is in Forbes, for God's sake. I'm nobody. I clean toilets and serve food to people who look through me like I'm invisible. We don't live in the same world anymore. We never lived in the same world, Marcus said quietly, feeling the old ache in his chest. You were always too good for me, even before all this. You saw beauty in everything. You made me want to be better, but you loved me anyway. At least I thought you did. Don't, Isabella's voice cracked like breaking glass. Don't question that. Don't you dare question that. Leaving you was like cutting out my own heart. Every morning I wake up, and for just a second I forget. I reach for you, and then I remember, and the grief hits me all over again like I'm living that moment of leaving 1,000 times. Then stop running. Fight with me. We'll destroy them together. Legally, financially, whatever it takes. I'm not the same kid you left behind, Isabella. I have power now. Real power. Let me use it to protect you." For a moment, Isabella wavered. "Let me use it to protect you." For a moment, Isabella wavered. Marcus saw hope flicker in her eyes, saw her imagining a life where she didn't have to look over her shoulder, where they could have the future they'd planned, where the nightmare finally ended. Then her expression hardened again, and Marcus knew she was about to break his heart all over again. "There's something else," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I never told you. Something you deserve to know." "What?" Isabella took a shaking breath, and Marcus watched her gather courage for whatever she was about to say. "The night I left, I was going to tell you at the wedding. I had it all planned. I was going to tell you during our first dance. I was pregnant, Marcus. 8 weeks pregnant with your baby." The world tilted sideways. Marcus grabbed the wall behind him to steady himself, his vision tunneling. "What?" "I found out 2 weeks before the wedding. I was so happy, so stupidly, impossibly happy. I imagined telling you, watching your face light up, planning a nursery in whatever apartment we'd get, and then my father told me about the debt. About Moretti. About what I had to do." Isabella's tears were flowing freely now. "I had to choose. Tell you and watch Moretti kill you both, or run and at least give our child a chance at life." "Our child." The words echoed in Marcus's mind like thunder. His knees felt weak. He had a child. Isabella had been pregnant when she left. She'd been carrying his baby and facing down monsters alone. Where? He could barely form words around the knot in his throat. "Where is the baby?" Isabella's face transformed, a soft smile breaking through the fear and exhaustion, the first genuine smile he'd seen on her face in 5 years. "At home, with my neighbor who babysits. She's 4 years old now. Her name is Sophie. And Marcus." Isabella's voice broke with emotion. "She has your eyes, your smile, your stubborn chin. She's perfect and she's half you, and every day I look at her and remember what I lost." Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had narrowed to this impossible truth. He'd had a daughter for 4 years and never knew. All the birthdays he'd missed, the first steps, the first words, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees, stolen from him because some criminal thought he owned Isabella like property. "I need to see her," Marcus said hoarsely, pushing off the wall. "Right now, tonight, take me to her." "Marcus, I can't just Isabella." His voice broke on her name. "I have missed 4 years of my daughter's life. 4 years. I wasn't there when she was born. I didn't hear her first word. I didn't teach her to walk. I've missed everything, and it's killing me right now, actually killing me, knowing she exists and I'm not with her. I'm not missing another second. Please." Something in his voice, the raw desperation, the pain, the yearning, must have convinced her, because Isabella nodded slowly. "Okay, but you need to understand. Sophie doesn't know about you." I told her. I told her Daddy had to go away for work and couldn't come back. I didn't know what else to say. The knife in Marcus's chest twisted deeper. "You told her I abandoned you both." "I told her a story that wouldn't break her heart," Isabella said sharply, some of her old fire returning. "What was I supposed to say? Daddy doesn't know you exist, because bad men want to kill Mommy. She's 4 years old, Marcus." I gave her a story she could understand. Marcus wanted to be angry. He wanted to rage at the universe for this cosmic injustice, to scream at Isabella for keeping this from him, to punch something until his hands bled. But looking at Isabella, really looking at her, he saw the toll 5 years of running had taken, the dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide, the way her uniform hung loose on a frame that used to be curvier, the premature lines around her mouth from stress and fear, the calluses on her hands from years of manual labor. She'd been living in hell to protect their daughter. His anger died in his throat, replaced by something fierce and protective. "Take me to her," he said more gently. "Please, I need to see her." They took a cab to the Bronx, the 30-minute ride passing in tense silence. Isabella sat as far from Marcus as the back seat allowed, her leg bouncing nervously, her hands twisting in her lap. Marcus watched her out of the corner of his eye, cataloguing all the changes. She was still beautiful, still the woman he'd fallen in love with, but life had carved itself into her features in ways that made his heart ache. The neighborhood where the cab dropped them was rough, graffiti-tagged buildings with crumbling facades, bars on every window, broken streetlights creating pools of darkness. Groups of young men loitered on corners, eyeing the cab suspiciously as it pulled away. Marcus instinctively moved closer to Isabella, his protective instincts flaring. "This is where you've been living?" Marcus asked, horrified as he took in the surroundings. "It's safe, anonymous. No doorman to remember faces or ask questions. Cash only. Landlord doesn't check references too carefully." Isabella unlocked the building's front door. The lock was broken, he noticed, and led him up 3 flights of stairs. The stairwell smelled like urine and marijuana smoke. "I know it's not much, it's a slum," Marcus said bluntly. "So you've been raising our daughter in a slum?" "I've been raising our daughter alive," Isabella shot back, her eyes flashing. "Which is more than I could have done in your Park Avenue penthouse, with Moretti's people watching every entrance. Don't you dare judge my choices when you don't know what I've been through." Marcus held up his hands in surrender. She was right. He had no right to judge when he hadn't been there, when he hadn't known. Isabella stopped at apartment 3C and worked 3 separate deadbolts before opening the door. "Mrs. Chen?" "It's me." An elderly Chinese woman emerged from what Marcus assumed was the bedroom, finger to her lips. "She just fell asleep 20 minutes ago. Long day at pre-K, they had a field trip to the zoo." "I'm sorry it's so late," Isabella said, handing her cash from her apron pocket. "Thank you for staying." Mrs. Chen glanced curiously at Marcus, taking in his expensive suit and watch, then back at Isabella. Whatever she saw in Isabella's face made her nod knowingly, a small smile crossing her weathered features. "Is good. She should know her Baba," Mrs. Chen said, patting Isabella's hand. Then she looked at Marcus directly. "You take care of them now, yes? They need someone to take care of them." "Yes," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will, I promise." Mrs. Chen nodded, satisfied, and left. The apartment was tiny. Marcus's walk-in closet was probably bigger. But it was clean and filled with evidence of Sophie's presence that made his chest tight. Crayon drawings covered every wall. Stick figure families, cats, rainbows, houses with smoking chimneys. A small bookshelf overflowed with picture books, their spines creased from repeated readings. Toys were neatly organized in plastic bins. A play kitchen occupied one corner. Disney princess decorations adorned every surface. Isabella had created a home here. A real home, despite the circumstances, despite the fear, despite having nothing. Marcus walked to the bedroom doorway and stopped breathing. She was perfect. Impossibly perfectly beautiful. Tiny and delicate, curled up under a pink comforter with a stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Her dark curls spread across the pillow like a halo. And Isabella was right, she had his eyes. Even closed in sleep, he recognized the shape of them. The thick lashes that his mother always said made him look like a girl when he was young. But she had Isabella's nose, Isabella's mouth, Isabella's bone structure, their daughter, the physical manifestation of their love, sleeping peacefully while unaware her entire world was about to change. "Can I?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Can I touch her?" Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face, her hand covering her mouth to muffle the sobs. Marcus knelt beside the twin bed, his hand trembling as he gently touched Sophie's soft curls. They felt like silk between his fingers. She stirred, sighing in her sleep, and rolled over slightly. Her small hand reached out, found his finger, and gripped it reflexively. Something inside Marcus's chest broke open, all the pain and longing and loss of 5 years shattering against this one perfect moment. He was touching his daughter. His daughter was holding his hand. This small, perfect person existed, and she was half him, and he'd never known. "I'm going to fix this," Marcus whispered to Isabella, his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. "I swear to God I'm going to fix this so you never have to hide again. So she never has to hide. So we can be a family the way we were always meant to be. Marcus, it's not that simple. Yes, it is." He stood, fire blazing in his eyes, his jaw set in determination. "Moretti's brothers want money and power, right? Everything's transactional with these people. So I'll make them an offer they can't refuse. I'll pay whatever debt your father owed, triple it. And I'll make it clear that touching you means going to war with Wellington Industries. We have enough lawyers to bury them in litigation for decades. We have enough security to make their lives hell. We have connections to federal prosecutors who'd love to take down what's left of the Moretti organization. And if they want to play dirty, I've got dirt on half the people they do business with." "You're talking about fighting the mob," Isabella said incredulously, her arms crossed protectively across her chest. "This isn't a business deal, Marcus. These are people who make problems disappear permanently. Who kill people and make it look like accidents. Who burned down a restaurant because the owner was 3 days late on a payment." "So am I," Marcus said, his smile cold and shark-like in a way that would have frightened his business competitors. "They've just never had to deal with someone who has both money and a reason to destroy them. They took 5 years of my life. They took 4 years of my daughter's life. They made you live in fear, working yourself to exhaustion hiding in this apartment. I'm going to take everything from them." The next morning, Sophie woke to find a strange man sitting at their tiny kitchen table, talking quietly with her mother. Marcus had stayed all night unable to leave, watching his daughter sleep while making plans with Isabella. When Sophie emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she stopped short at the sight of him. "Mommy, who's that?" Sophie asked, clutching Mr. Hops, her stuffed rabbit. Isabella knelt down, brushing Sophie's wild curls from her face with tender fingers. "Baby, this is someone very special. His name is Marcus and—" her voice broke, "and he's your daddy." Sophie's eyes went wide, darting between Isabella and Marcus. "My daddy? My real daddy who had to go away for work?" Marcus's heart clenched. He slid off the chair and crouched down to Sophie's level, not wanting to loom over her. Up close, he could see even more of himself in her features, the shape of her ears, the way one eyebrow arched slightly higher than the other, the stubborn set of her chin. "I didn't want to go away," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion he didn't try to hide. "I wanted to be with you and your mommy every single day. I wanted to be there when you were born, and when you took your first steps and when you said your first words. And now that I've found you, I'm never going away again. Is that okay?" Sophie studied him seriously for a long moment, her head tilted to one side. Then she held out her stuffed rabbit with both hands. "This is Mr. Hops. He protects me when I'm scared. Do you want to hold him?" Marcus accepted the rabbit like it was made of gold and precious gems. "Thank you, Sophie. That's very brave of you to share him. Mommy says brave people help when others are scared." Sophie reached out and touched the tear tracking down Marcus's cheek with one small finger. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Marcus admitted honestly. "But not for me. I'm scared for you and your mommy. There are some bad people who want to hurt your mommy, and I need to protect you both." Sophie nodded sagely, like this made perfect sense to her 4-year-old understanding of the world. Bad men want to hurt mommy. "I heard her tell Mrs. Chen when she thought I was sleeping." Isabella gasped. "Sophie, you were supposed to be asleep." "Don't worry, Mommy," Sophie said with the absolute confidence only a 4-year-old could muster. "Daddy's here now. Daddies protect their families. That's what Princess Elena's daddy did in my storybook, when the dragon came." Marcus looked at Isabella over Sophie's head, his expression fierce and determined. "Sophie's right. That's exactly what I'm going to do." That morning, Marcus called his office and told Patricia to cancel everything for the next month. Then he made a series of phone calls, to his lawyers, to James Chen, to contacts in law enforcement, to a friend who worked at the U.S. Attorney's office. Sophie sat on his lap during the calls, playing with his expensive watch and asking questions in whispered voices. "Why is your watch so shiny? Do you work in a big building? Can I come see it? Do you like dinosaurs?" "I like dinosaurs. My favorite is T-Rex because he's scary but also cool." Marcus answered each question while simultaneously planning legal warfare, his heart swelling with every interaction. This was his daughter, his brilliant, curious, perfect daughter, and he'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. That night, after Sophie fell asleep in the apartment's only bedroom, Isabella had given Marcus the couch, which was too short for his frame. Isabella and Marcus sat at the tiny kitchen table that wobbled on uneven legs. They drank instant coffee because it was all Isabella had, and Marcus made a mental note to have groceries delivered in the morning. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, wrapping his hands around the chipped mug. "Going after the Morettis directly is too dangerous, too unpredictable. They're criminals. They don't follow rules or respond to logic. But there's another way." "What way?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. "Your father. Thomas Carter currently lives in Florida, under a fake identity, Donald Marsh. I found him 3 days ago." Isabella's hands trembled, coffee sloshing over the rim of her mug. My father? I haven't spoken to him since the night before the wedding. Since he told me what he'd done. What I had to do. I know. Marcus's expression hardened. Since he sold you to save his own skin. But here's the thing. He's the one who made the original deal with Moretti. Which means he's the one who can unmake it. Vincent will never agree to just let me go. It's about pride now. About the family's reputation. He will if Thomas testifies against him for witness intimidation, extortion, and human trafficking. I've already spoken to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're very interested in building a case against the Moretti family. They've been trying to dismantle the organization for years, but they've never had anyone willing to testify. Your father's testimony, combined with your account of what happened, could put Vincent and his brothers away for decades. Isabella shook her head violently, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the linoleum. No, absolutely not. If my father testifies, they'll kill him. And then they'll kill me for cooperating. And Sophie... She couldn't finish the sentence. Her hand pressed to her chest like she was trying to hold her heart in. Not if we do this right. Marcus stood too, taking her hands in his. Your father testifies, goes into witness protection with a new identity, new location. You testify, also go into protection temporarily. The Morettis go to prison. Their organization collapses without leadership. We use the trial to expose every dirty deal they've ever made, the politicians they've bribed, the judges they've bought, the police they've corrupted. By the time we're done, they won't have the resources or the connections to come after you. And Sophie? You want our daughter in witness protection, moving every few months, never having a real home, always looking over her shoulder. No. Marcus's jaw tightened, his hands squeezing hers. Sophie stays with me. They can't touch her if she's under Wellington protection. And as far as the world knows, she's just my daughter. We'll tell everyone I recently discovered I had a child, which is true. No connection to you or the case. I'll hire round-the-clock security. She'll go to the best private school with armed guards. She'll live in my penthouse, which has better security than most government buildings. When it's over, when the Morettis are behind bars, we can be a family again. Publicly, legally, forever. It was a terrible plan. It meant more separation, more fear, more living in limbo. But as Isabella looked into Marcus's determined eyes, she realized it was also their only chance at a real future. The only way Sophie would ever be truly safe. I'll need to talk to my father, she said finally, her voice small. I haven't seen him in 5 years. He destroyed my life, Marcus. He destroyed our life. I don't know if I can even look at him without hating him. Marcus finished gently. I understand. God knows I hate him for what he did. But hate is a luxury we can't afford right now. We need him. Isabella pulled her hands free and wrapped her arms around herself. He sold me his own daughter, traded me like property to pay off a gambling debt. What kind of father does that? A weak one, Marcus said. A desperate, weak man who made the worst possible choice. But Isabella. He moved around the table to stand in front of her. You're the strongest person I know. You've survived 5 years alone with a child, living in constant fear, working 3 jobs, and you never broke. You've got more strength in your little finger than your father has in his entire body. You can do this. And this time, you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. Isabella looked up at him, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of being strong, of being scared, of pretending everything is okay for Sophie when I'm dying inside. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and she collapsed against his chest, finally letting herself break down. He held her while she sobbed, 5 years of fear and grief and exhaustion pouring out of her. He stroked her hair and murmured reassurances, and let her soak his shirt with tears. You don't have to be strong alone anymore, he whispered against her hair. I'm here. I'm not leaving. We're going to fix this together. 3 days later, Marcus and Isabella flew to Florida on his private jet. Sophie stayed in Manhattan with Marcus's mother, who'd cried for an hour straight when she learned she had a granddaughter she'd never known about. Catherine Wellington had held Sophie and told her stories about when Marcus was little, and Sophie had listened with rapt attention, finally having a connection to her father's history. Thomas Carter lived in Clearwater, in a modest ranch house in a quiet neighborhood. His fake identity, Donald Marsh, was that of a retired insurance salesman. When Marcus knocked on the door, the man who answered looked 20 years older than the last time Isabella had seen him. His hair had gone completely grey. He'd lost weight, his clothes hanging loose on a frame that had once been solid. But it was his eyes that showed the real change. They were haunted, filled with guilt and self-loathing that had carved itself into every line of his face. "Isabella?" Thomas's face crumbled the moment he saw her. "Oh God, Isabella, I'm so—" "Don't," Isabella said coldly, her hand coming up to stop him. "Don't apologize. Don't cry. Just listen." They sat in Thomas's sparse living room. The house was barely furnished, just the essentials, like Thomas didn't feel he deserved comfort. Photos covered one wall, and Marcus recognized a younger Isabella in graduation robes. Isabella at various ages, Isabella with her mother. Thomas had been living with his guilt, surrounding himself with reminders of what he'd destroyed. Marcus explained the plan while Thomas wept openly, his hands shaking as he clutched a faded photo of Isabella from her high school graduation. "I never wanted this," Thomas said brokenly, his voice hoarse from crying. "I was weak, so goddamn weak. I was drowning in debt, and Moretti said he could make it all go away. Just one favor. Just let Anthony meet my daughter." That's how it started, just a meeting. And then Anthony wanted to date her, and I thought maybe it would be okay, maybe they'd actually like each other. But Isabella wouldn't even meet with him. "She was in love with you," he said, looking at Marcus. "Completely in love. Wouldn't even consider anyone else." "So Moretti changed the terms," Marcus said, his voice hard. "He said if Isabella married Anthony, all my debts would be forgiven. If she didn't, he'd kill me and my wife, make it look like a murder-suicide. And then he'd come after Isabella anyway, just to teach other families what happened when you defied him." Thomas looked at his daughter with desperate, pleading eyes. "I know you can never forgive me. I don't forgive myself, but if testifying means you can finally be free, I'll do it. I'll do anything." "You'll do more than testify," Marcus said sharply, leaning forward. "You'll wear a wire. You'll get Vincent to admit on tape that he forced Isabella into this arrangement, that he threatened to kill you both. You'll get him to talk about every other family he's destroyed the same way. We need enough evidence to bury him and his brothers." "They'll kill me," Thomas whispered, staring at his shaking hands. "Yes," Marcus said bluntly, not sugarcoating it. "They probably will try, which is why you'll have federal protection starting today. U.S. Marshals are waiting outside right now. You say yes and you disappear into the system. New name, new location, new life. You say no, and Isabella spends the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Your granddaughter grows up never feeling safe. Is that what you want?" Thomas looked up sharply. "Granddaughter?" Isabella pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of Sophie. "Her name is Sophie. She's 4, and she spent her entire life in hiding because of what you did. Because of the choices you made. You can't undo that. You can never undo that, but you can end it. You can make sure she grows up free." Thomas stared at the photo, fresh tears streaming down his face. "She's beautiful. She looks just like you did at that age." "She looks like Marcus," Isabella corrected, her voice tight. "She has his eyes, his smile, his stubborn determination, and that's good. Because Marcus is a good man, better than you, better than I deserve after what I put him through." "You deserve everything," Marcus said quietly to Isabella. Then he turned back to Thomas, his expression hardening. "What's it going to be? Are you going to be weak again, or are you finally going to do the right thing?" Thomas looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he set down the photo and straightened his shoulders. "I'll do it, whatever it takes. I'll wear the wire. I'll get you your evidence. Just promise me you'll take care of her. Promise me you'll protect them both." "I don't need to promise," Marcus said coldly. "I've been protecting my family, whether I knew about them or not, my entire life. You're the one who put them in danger. You're the one who needs to make this right." The next 2 weeks were hell. Federal agents coached Thomas on what to say, how to behave, how to draw Vincent Moretti into admitting his crimes on tape. They used the fact that Vincent had recently been released from prison on a technicality. His original conviction had been overturned due to mishandled evidence. Vincent was free, angry and looking to reassert control over his organization. That made him dangerous, but also potentially sloppy. Thomas's first meeting with Vincent was at a restaurant in Queens that the Moretti family owned. Marcus watched from a surveillance van 2 blocks away, listening through headphones while federal agents monitored multiple cameras. "Thomas," Vincent's voice came through gravelly from years of smoking. "I heard you were dead." "Almost was," Thomas replied, his voice shaking slightly. "Had to disappear for a while. Lay low." "Because of your daughter?" "Yeah, she ran. The night before the wedding." Anthony was furious. "Anthony was a disappointment," Vincent said dismissively. "Dead now anyway. Wrapped his car around a tree because he couldn't handle his liquor. But that doesn't mean your debt is forgiven, Thomas. You owe me. You promised me your daughter, and you didn't deliver." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, listening to Vincent talk about Isabella like she was a car or a piece of property. "I know," Thomas said. "That's why I'm here. I found her. She's in New York working as a maid." Marcus's blood ran cold. That wasn't part of the script. Thomas was improvising, and it was dangerous. "Working as a maid?" Vincent laughed, the sound cruel. "The little princess brought down to nothing." "I like it. Where is she?" "I can tell you," Thomas said. "But I need something in return. I need you to forgive the debt. All of it. Let me disappear for real. Give me enough money to start over somewhere far from here. You want me to pay you." Vincent's voice turned dangerous. "You owe me, Thomas. I should put a bullet in your head right now for wasting my time." "But you won't," Thomas said, and Marcus heard genuine fear in his voice, but also something else, determination. "Because you want to know where Isabella is. You want to finish what you started. Make an example of her for everyone who thinks they can defy the Moretti family." There was a long silence. Then Vincent spoke, his voice cold and calculating. "Fine. Tell me where she is and I'll consider your debt paid. But Thomas, if you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trap, I'll kill you and your wife so slowly you'll beg for death." "It's not a trap," Thomas said. "I just want this over. I want my life back." He gave Vincent a fake address, an abandoned building the federal agents had set up. The plan was to catch Vincent or his men when they went there, arrest them on attempted kidnapping or assault charges, then use that leverage to get Vincent to talk about everything else. But as Marcus listened to the recording later, he realized something had shifted in Thomas's voice when he gave up the address. There was a finality to it, like a man who'd made peace with something terrible. The second meeting happened a week later. This time Vincent wanted Thomas to be present when they grabbed Isabella from the fake address. "Insurance," Vincent called it, "to make sure you're not setting me up." Thomas agreed. The third meeting was scheduled for the day before Thomas was supposed to testify. It was supposed to be a final check-in, Vincent confirming the plan. But when Thomas showed up to the restaurant, he was carrying something the federal agents hadn't given him. A gun. Marcus watched from the surveillance van, his heart stopping as Thomas walked into the restaurant. The agents were screaming into their radios, preparing to storm the building, but everything happened too fast. Thomas found Vincent at a back table, surrounded by his brothers and 3 bodyguards. He walked up calmly, pulled out the gun and shot Vincent Moretti once in the head before anyone could react. Then he dropped the gun and put his hands up. "It's over," Thomas said to the bodyguards who'd drawn their weapons. "I surrender. Call the police. Tell them Thomas Carter just killed Vincent Moretti for what he did to my daughter." Marcus sat in Isabella's apartment, watching the news coverage with growing horror. Every channel showed the same footage. Thomas Carter being led away in handcuffs, Vincent Moretti's body being wheeled out on a stretcher, federal agents swarming the scene. The headlines screamed about a revenge killing, a father's desperate attempt to protect his daughter from the mob. Isabella sat beside him on the couch, her face pale, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Sophie was at Catherine Wellington's penthouse, thank God, protected from seeing her mother fall apart. "He sacrificed himself," Isabella whispered, her voice hollow. "He knew testifying might not be enough. Knew Vincent might walk on a technicality again, or have connections in prison that would let him reach us. So he—" She couldn't finish, her hand pressed over her mouth. Marcus pulled her into his arms as she broke down completely. Her father, the man who'd betrayed her, destroyed her life, sold her to monsters, had given his own life to free her. It was too much. Too complicated. Too heartbreaking to process. "The wire recordings," Marcus said, trying to find something solid to hold on to in this chaos. "The federal agents have everything Vincent said. That evidence still exists. His brothers, his organization, they can still take them down. But my father will spend the rest of his life in prison. Isabella sobbed against his chest. He'll die there, alone, knowing what he did. He made his choice, Marcus said gently, stroking her hair. A terrible choice 5 years ago and a brave choice today. He can't undo the first, but maybe the second one balances the scales somehow. Over the next 72 hours, the fallout was immense. The wire recordings Thomas had made were submitted as evidence in a massive federal investigation. With Vincent Moretti dead, and the recordings exposing decades of criminal activity, the remaining Moretti brothers turned on each other. Salvatore cut a deal with prosecutors, testifying against Carlo in exchange for a reduced sentence. Carlo fled to Italy, but was arrested by Interpol within a week. The organization that had controlled Isabella's life for 5 years crumbled in a matter of days. Associates were arrested. Corrupt officials were exposed. Bank accounts were frozen. Properties were seized. By the time the dust settled, the Moretti crime family had been effectively dismantled. But the victory felt hollow. Thomas Carter was sentenced to 25 years for voluntary manslaughter. His defense argued temporary insanity, driven by guilt over selling his daughter. But the judge wasn't sympathetic. 25 years minimum before parole eligibility. Isabella visited him once in prison 2 months later, Sophie holding her hand as they sat across from the broken man who'd caused so much pain while trying, too late, to fix it. Thomas looked smaller somehow, diminished in the orange prison jumpsuit. His hair had gone completely white in just 2 months. But his eyes, when he looked at Sophie, filled with wonder and devastating regret. "She's beautiful," Thomas said, his voice choked with emotion. "God, she's so beautiful. She looks just like you did at that age, Bella." "She looks like Marcus," Isabella corrected firmly, squeezing Sophie's hand. "And that's good. Marcus is a good man. The kind of man who doesn't sell his daughter to save himself. The kind of man who spent 5 years looking for me. The kind of man who's going to raise Sophie to be strong and brave and nothing like you." Thomas flinched but nodded, accepting the verbal blow. "Will you tell her about me someday? When she's older?" Sophie tugged on Isabella's sleeve. "Mommy, is this Grandpa Tom? The one you told me about on the plane?" Isabella had prepared Sophie as much as possible, explaining that Grandpa Tom had made very bad choices, but was trying to fix them. That he loved them but had to go away for a long time because of what he'd done. "Yes, baby. This is Grandpa Tom." Sophie studied Thomas seriously, then pulled a drawing from her backpack, a crayon picture of a house with 3 stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Sophie. She pushed it across the table toward him. "Mrs. Wellington says everyone deserves kindness, even people who make mistakes," Sophie said, with the wisdom of a child who'd learned empathy from Marcus's mother. "So I made you a picture for your room, so you won't be lonely." Thomas picked up the drawing with shaking hands, and tears rolled down his face unchecked. "Thank you, Sophie. I'll treasure this. I'll look at it every day and remember what I'm paying for." "Who I'm paying for?" Isabella stood, gathering Sophie. "We should go." "Isabella, wait." Thomas looked at his daughter desperately. "I know I can never make this right. I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. But I need you to know killing Vincent was the first truly brave thing I've ever done in my life. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times, if that's what it took to free you." "I'll tell her the truth," Isabella said finally, her voice thick. "When she's older. That you made terrible mistakes. That you hurt people you loved. But that in the end, when it mattered most, you tried to make it right. That you gave everything, your freedom, your future, your life, to protect us. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. And for Thomas Carter, facing decades in a cell with only his conscience for company, it was more than he deserved. The legal nightmare took 6 months to fully resolve. Isabella testified at multiple trials, helping prosecutors build cases against the remaining Moretti associates. Marcus hired the best security money could buy, former Secret Service agents who accompanied Isabella everywhere. Sophie adjusted to her new life with remarkable resilience, splitting time between Isabella's new apartment. Marcus had moved them to a secure building in Manhattan, and Marcus's penthouse. But the trauma didn't disappear overnight. Isabella still woke up screaming from nightmares, checking the locks compulsively, flinching at unexpected sounds. Marcus found her crying in the shower, in the kitchen at 3 a.m., standing at the window watching the street below for threats that no longer existed. "I don't know how to stop being afraid," Isabella admitted one night, curled up on Marcus's couch while Sophie slept in the guest room. 5 years of running. It's like my body doesn't remember any other way to exist." Marcus pulled her close, his heart aching. "Then we'll teach your body to remember, together, one day at a time. Therapy, medication if you need it, whatever it takes. You're not alone anymore, Bella." He'd started calling her Bella, a compromise between Isabella and the identity she'd lived with for 3 years. She seemed to like it, the name representing both who she'd been and who she'd become. "I robbed you of so much," Isabella said, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. 5 years we could have been together. 4 years with Sophie. I took that from you." "You saved our daughter's life," Marcus corrected firmly. "You made impossible choices in an impossible situation. And you survived. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to be proud of." They started therapy, individual and couples counseling. Isabella worked through her trauma with a specialist in PTSD. Marcus processed his grief and anger over the lost years. Together, they learned how to communicate again, how to trust, how to rebuild what had been broken. Sophie thrived. With the threat gone, she blossomed, attending an elite private school, making friends, taking ballet classes, living the childhood she deserved. She called Marcus Daddy without hesitation and had wrapped Catherine Wellington completely around her tiny finger. Catherine spoiled Sophie shamelessly, making up for 4 years of missed grandmother duties. "Your mother bought Sophie her 3rd American Girl doll this month," Isabella told Marcus one evening, exasperated but smiling. "We're running out of room for all the toys." "My mother's making up for lost time," Marcus said, grinning. "Let her spoil Sophie. God knows we all deserve some happiness after what we've been through." Marcus's business partners had been shocked when he'd announced he had a 4-year-old daughter. The Wall Street Journal had run a profile. Wellington's secret. Billionaire CEO discovers hidden daughter. Marcus had controlled the narrative carefully, admitting only that he'd recently learned about Sophie, that her mother had had reasons for keeping Sophie's existence secret, and that they were now building a relationship. The truth, the mob connections, the threats, the years of hiding remained private, protected. The years of hiding remained private, protected. Some stories didn't need to be public. 6 months after Vincent Moretti's death, Marcus took Isabella back to the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, the same spot where he'd proposed 7 years ago. The November air was cold, but Isabella didn't seem to notice, wrapped in the cashmere coat Marcus had bought her. She'd protested the expense, and he'd ignored her protests entirely. "I can't believe we're actually here," Isabella said, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. "After everything. After 5 years of running, of being afraid, of thinking I'd never see you again, I kept thinking something would go wrong, that I'd wake up and still be Bella Rodriguez, serving canapes, hiding from shadows." "Oh, you're not running anymore," Marcus said, pulling her close against the evening chill. "You're home. You're safe. You're with me, and I'm never letting you go again." "Home," Isabella repeated, testing the word like it was foreign. "I almost forgot what that felt like." "Good, because I have a question to ask you." Marcus pulled a small box from his pocket, the same box that had held her original engagement ring, stored safely in his penthouse safe for 5 years. He'd never been able to bring himself to get rid of it. "Isabella Marie Carter, will you marry me? Again? Properly this time? With our daughter as flower girl and no criminals trying to kill us? With our whole future ahead of us, and nothing standing in our way?" Isabella's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. "Yes, God, Marcus, yes. 1,000 times yes. 1,000,000 times yes." The ring slid onto her finger like it had never left, fitting perfectly just as it always had. They kissed as the sunset blazed behind them, and for the first time in 5 years, Isabella felt the constant knot of fear in her chest finally, fully unravel. She was safe. Sophie was safe. They were together. The nightmare was over. "When?" Isabella asked against his lips. "When can we get married?" "Whenever you want," Marcus said, grinning. "Tomorrow. Next month. Next year. I've waited 5 years. I can wait as long as you need." "I don't want to wait," Isabella said fiercely. "I've wasted enough time. Lost enough years. I want to marry you as soon as possible. I want Sophie to see her parents get married. I want to start our life together, really together now. So they planned a wedding for February. 3 months away, enough time to organize, but not so long that the waiting became unbearable. Marcus wanted something huge and elaborate, a statement to the world that Isabella was his, and he was hers. Isabella wanted something small and intimate, just family and close friends. They compromised. A medium-sized ceremony at Marcus's estate in the Hamptons, about 100 guests, elegant but not ostentatious. Sophie took her job as flower girl with intense seriousness, practicing her petal-scattering walk for weeks. Catherine Wellington cried through the entire planning process, so happy to finally see her son whole again. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Isabella had initially resisted the date as too cliché, but Marcus had convinced her it was perfect. Everything about us is dramatic and over the top, he'd argued. Why not lean into it? The morning of the wedding, Isabella woke up in Catherine's guest room, traditional bad luck to see the groom before the ceremony, and actually felt peaceful, no anxiety. No fear, no looking over her shoulder, just excitement and joy and the bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Mommy, you look like a princess," Sophie exclaimed when Isabella emerged in her wedding dress, a simple but elegant white gown with delicate lace sleeves, her hair in loose waves down her back, the way Marcus loved it. "You look like a princess too, baby," Isabella said, adjusting Sophie's flower girl dress. "Are you ready to walk down the aisle and throw your petals?" "I've been practicing for weeks," Sophie said seriously. "I won't mess up. I promise." The ceremony was held in the estate's garden, despite the February cold. Heaters had been strategically placed, and guests wore elegant coats and wraps. White flowers, roses, lilies, peonies, created an arch where Marcus stood waiting, looking devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. When Isabella walked down the aisle on Catherine's arm, her own mother had passed away 2 years prior, another loss Isabella had borne alone, Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He didn't try to hide them, didn't care that 100 people saw him cry. All that mattered was Isabella finally coming back to him. Sophie scattered petals with intense concentration, taking her job very seriously. When she reached the altar, she stood beside Isabella holding a small bouquet, beaming with pride. The ceremony was beautiful and emotional. They'd written their own vows, Marcus promising to protect Isabella and Sophie with everything he had, to never take a single day with them for granted, to love them fiercely and completely for the rest of his life. Isabella promised to trust Marcus, to let him help carry her burdens, to never run again no matter how scared she got, to build a life together, filled with the joy they'd been denied for 5 years. "I loved you 5 years ago," Isabella said, her voice strong despite the tears. "I loved you every day we were apart. I loved you through the fear and the running and the lonely nights. I loved you when I looked at Sophie and saw your eyes staring back at me. And I'll love you every day for the rest of our lives. You're my home, Marcus. You always were." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," Marcus pulled Isabella close and kissed her like a man who'd almost lost everything and somehow gotten a second chance. Deep and thorough and full of promise. Sophie interrupted by tugging on Marcus's jacket. "Daddy, can we have cake now?" The guests erupted in laughter. Marcus scooped Sophie up onto his hip while keeping his other arm around Isabella. "Yes, princess. We can have cake now." As they walked back down the aisle together, husband, wife, and daughter, finally a complete family, Isabella caught sight of herself in one of the decorative mirrors lining the garden. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone were the dark circles, the hunched shoulders, the constant fear in her eyes. In their place, a woman who'd survived hell and come out stronger. A woman who'd done whatever it took to protect her child. A woman who'd found her way home against impossible odds. The reception was joyful and loud, full of dancing and champagne and toasts that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Marcus's business associates mingled with the few friends from Isabella's old life who'd remained loyal. Sophie danced with her grandmother, with Marcus, with anyone who would spin her around until she got dizzy. Late in the evening, after Sophie had fallen asleep on Catherine's shoulder and been carried to bed, Marcus and Isabella slow danced alone in the garden under string lights and stars. I love you, Marcus said quietly, his forehead pressed against hers. I never stopped. Even when I hated you for leaving, even when I tried to move on with other women, underneath it all, I loved you. Always. Only you. I know, Isabella said, her arms wrapped around his neck. I felt it. Every time I looked at Sophie and saw your eyes staring back at me, I felt how much you would have loved her if you'd known. It kept me going on the worst days. The thought that somewhere you were still out there, still loving me, still waiting. Promise me something, Marcus said, pulling back to look into her eyes. Promise me that if anything ever scares you again, anything, you'll tell me. No more running. No more handling things alone. No more protecting me by pushing me away. We're a team now, forever, in everything. Forever, Isabella agreed, her voice fierce. No more running. No more secrets. No more fear, just us, just our family. Just the life we almost lost but somehow got back. Sophie stirred in her sleep upstairs, and they could hear her soft voice through the baby monitor Marcus had insisted on installing. Mommy and Daddy, she mumbled, still dreaming. Together forever. Marcus and Isabella met each other's eyes over the sound of their daughter's voice and smiled through tears. They'd lost 5 years. They'd been broken and scattered across different worlds. They'd survived betrayal, violence, and the kind of fear that destroyed most people. But they'd found their way back. Against impossible odds, through unimaginable pain, they'd found their way home to each other. And this time nothing, not criminals, not fear, not the entire world, would ever tear them apart. Isabella Wellington, she'd taken Marcus's name officially, leaving Bella Rodriguez behind forever, sat in the nursery of their Hamptons home, rocking their newborn son, Alexander Thomas Wellington. Sophie knelt beside the rocking chair, gently touching her baby brother's tiny hand. He's so small, Sophie whispered, awed. Was I ever that small? You were, Isabella said, smiling down at her daughter. Just as small and just as perfect. Marcus appeared in the doorway, watching his family with an expression of complete contentment. 7 years ago, he'd been a workaholic bachelor building an empire to fill the void in his life. Now he was a husband and father, and the empire meant nothing compared to the 3 people in this room. Thomas called, Marcus said, sitting on the floor beside Sophie. From prison. He wanted to know how Alexander's doing. If we'd sent him photos like we promised. Isabella had made peace with her father over the past year, as much peace as was possible. She visited him every few months, bringing Sophie, letting him see what his sacrifice had earned. Thomas would never be free, but knowing his daughter and grandchildren were safe seemed to give his life meaning. I'll send them tomorrow, Isabella said. He should know his grandson. Grandson named after him, Marcus added. Thomas is the middle name. That means something. It means forgiveness is possible, Isabella said quietly. Even for terrible mistakes. Even for things that can't be undone. It means people can change, can do better, can make amends even when redemption seems impossible. Sophie climbed into Marcus's lap, and he wrapped his arms around her. Daddy, tell me the story again. About how you found Mommy. It had become Sophie's favorite bedtime story, the tale of how Marcus and Isabella lost each other and found each other again. Isabella always edited out the scary parts, but the core remained, true love, separation, and miraculous reunion. Once upon a time, Marcus began, his voice taking on the storytelling cadence Sophie loved, there was a man who loved a woman so much that when she disappeared, he spent 5 years searching the entire world for her. And just when he'd almost given up hope, he walked into a mansion and saw her again. And nothing, not bad men, not fear, not anything in the world could keep them apart after that. And they lived happily ever after, Sophie finished, beaming, with me and baby Alexander. Exactly right, princess, Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. Isabella looked at her family, her brilliant, beautiful daughter, her strong, devoted husband, her peaceful, sleeping baby, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. The road here had been brutal. The cost had been enormous. She'd lost 5 years. Her father had lost his freedom, and the trauma would always be part of her story. But sitting here in this moment, with her family safe and whole and together, every terrible moment had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every tear, every sleepless night of fear, worth it for this. I love you, she said to Marcus, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for never giving up on me, for searching for 5 years, for protecting Sophie and me, for being exactly the man I always knew you were. I love you too, Marcus said, his eyes shining. Both of you. All three of you. My whole world right here in this room. Baby Alexander chose that moment to wake up, his tiny face scrunching in preparation for a cry. Isabella stood rocking him gently and began to sing a lullaby. Sophie joined in, her voice sweet and clear. Marcus added his deeper voice, and together, the Wellington family sang their son to sleep. Outside, the sun set over the Hamptons, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside, a family that had almost been destroyed by darkness found themselves surrounded by light, the kind of light that comes from surviving the impossible and choosing to love anyway. The kind of light that lasts forever. Did this story absolutely wreck you emotionally? If you're still crying over Marcus and Isabella's journey from heartbreak to happiness, smash that like button and subscribe. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers, and your support means the world. Drop a comment telling me what hit you hardest. Was it Thomas's sacrifice, Marcus meeting Sophie, the wedding? And let me know what story you want next. Another billionaire romance? A revenge plot? A secret baby with even more twists? I read every comment, and your suggestions inspire my content. Thank you for being part of this amazing community. Now go grab some tissues and come back next week for another emotional roller coaster.